In this era of Hyrule, most provinces they are hostile towards the lakes. Green zones, on the other hand, are friendly towards them. For example, between the Hospital Zora lives on north of the Upper village. Zora's hunting apparently is not able to catch fish itself. For reason, Zora returned from the border. Strong enough to reach an attack in the sacred realm of Hyrule. This incident marked the outbreak of the imprisoning war. The Zoras, being in the past a close ally to the Hylians, were likely fed up by the mistakes of the royal family, failing to keep evil siege, and must have decided to not partake in the war. With this, the flourishing relation and alliance to the king of Hyrule and the Hylians met a swift end. Another reason could be increased pollution in Zora's domain. In other waters, results in rather different reaction among the gentle Zoras. One group, including the king, became eventually seriously ill, with no other choice but to leave the war for Hyrule. Others were able to adapt as a result of evolution or mutation influenced by these new conditions. These individuals turned into River Zoras, who appointed a new monarch of the dynasty. The remaining River Zoras turned their back to their former allies, the Hylians, and isolated themselves more and more as time went by, displaying a more vicious nature. This may be an explanation as to why they attacked them and see him as an intruder to their territory. However, there are some Zoras that are willing to cooperate, namely the monarch himself, King Zora. He forced his way from Lake Hyrule through Zora River up to Zora's waterfall, ultimately struck a business deal with King Zora, selling him Zora's special flippers for 500 rupees. These allowed Link to swim through the deeper water sections, and as a bonus, the king allowed Link to use the whirlpool waterways.
The Sea Zora and the River Zora make an appearance in both of the Oracle games. However, the Sea Zora can only be found within Oracle of Ages, Labyrinth. In this game, it seems that both the vicious and potentially mutated River Zora and the friendly Sea Zora coexisted. Here, Link was confronted by the gravely ill King Zora, which was a result of Varan's poisoning of the sea, and only a magic potion would save His Majesty's life. Worse, King Zora had no successor, putting the entire monarchy on the line. In the future, this becomes reality, as the king remains deceased until Link returns with the magic potion to the past. Saving the king's life, Link asked for permission to enter Lord Jabber-Jabber. Since this isn't Ocarina of Time's Zora deity, but rather his descendant, the fish was still far too small to enter. This right here is our hint that Lord Jabber-Jabber managed to escape from Zora's fountain in both the adult and the downfall timeline branches before Zora's domain was frozen over. Not so different from a certain Jabberwock who we will eventually get to. Anyway, the hero of legend traveled to the present where he found King Zora alive and healthy, but still not willing to allow Link access. This time, it was the polluted water once again which had made the deity itself fall ill. Upon cleansing the entirety of the Zora Sea in the past, Link was finally able to enter Lord Jabber-Jabber in the present.
A long time passed in Hyrule, but the Sea Zoras did not return, leaving the River Zoras to take over their position in the downfall timeline. Zoras found in Lake Hyrule, Zora's River, and the Zora Waterfall, all vicious and see the hero as an intruder. Nonetheless, in approaching Zora's domain, it turns out several Zoras in the moment Link was about to enter Zora's domain, he was hit by a shady guy who had just stolen Queen Orin of the Zora's smooth gem and caused the queen to float up and spread panic and despair among her Zora underlings. Seeing this, Link went after the thief and found out that the stolen gem had been sold to the carpet salesman, forcing Link to purchase it prior to bringing it back to Zora's domain. In an instant, the queen was back to her normal form, and as a gesture of gratitude to Link, she bestowed him with Zora Flippers. obtained a pendant of wisdom from the House of Gales. Link encountered Azora underwear and told him how he was out swimming in human form, but was suddenly left behind. Obviously, the king had been trapped into a painting by Google and kidnapped. It soon turned out that Queen Florent was one of the seven sages. This might imply that Princess Rito, Ocarina of Time, distant relative to the Sage of Water. Trapped deep inside the Swamp Palace, was ultimately rescued by Link, and took part in a ceremony where Link was granted the Triforce of Courage.
In Zelda 1, with Azora were angry. Inhabited all
Dude, go!
surrounding the world. The same goes for Zelda 2. He also knew resisting nothing to enter the other time.
The hero of time defeated Ganon, was sent back to the past, leaving this timeline branch of Hyrule. But before we go any further, we need to return to the ending credits of Ocarina of Time. Here you can see King Zora and Rito mourning what they believe is the loss of their loved ones. Sorry. Truly. Slowly the merits of the hero of time faded into legend, and Ganondorf once again rose up. No new hero appeared, selected individuals, and sent up to a new service, Great Sea. We know for certain that the Zoras at some point evolved into the Rito, as both of them share the Zora Sapphire as their tribal symbol. The likely explanation for this connection is that Zora's domain was most likely seized along with Hyrule. In other words, they simply had no other choice but to leave their homeland, accept the new conditions, and find a new home.
Hyrule Encyclopedia explains that Azora couldn't survive three worlds surrounded. Using the
Police reported ahead.
period that when the three golden fortresses up in the heavens was not the world Hyrule used to. Azora had to. Fortunately to them, the gods met up. One that would cost the gods death. The dragon Baloo, tasked to keep Azora alive and reach out to it. Was its home and way of life. He granted them escape and allowed them to battle the world from an aquatic lunar species into an area planet. First becoming more human, eventually generations later go beyond and become bird-like beings. But it is a time for Zora. Apparently, as we already know from both the child and childhood timelines, that Zora migrated and lived outside of Hyrule.
A fact that can be confirmed in Tears of the Kingdom. Sidon mentions on one of the renovated stone monuments that he is the direct descendant of Princess Rito, a reality that is only possible if Ganon was defeated by Link and Princess Zelda. This information points to the event in which the Zora went their separate ways in the adult timeline that came after Ganondorf's return to the surface and the creation of the Great Sea. Throughout the timeline, the Zora adapted to their changing surroundings, necessary to fulfill their own future, either in combat or by migrating to neighboring bodies of water. Following this fact, the soon-to-be Rito most likely coerced the Gorons out of their home, Death Mountain, ironically with the aid of a dragon, who we all know that became Dragon Roost Island as Valu settled down as the permanent deity of the upcoming bird-like tribe. This covers the fate of the Zora who eventually evolved into the Rito. Hyrule Encyclopedia points to Great Fish Isle previously being Lake Hyrule, home of Jabu Jabu's descendant Jadun, which was once inhabited by Hyruleans, not specifically Hyruleans. I suspect that this in truth points to Zora, the former residence and caretaker of Lake Hyrule, a claim supported by the presence of Zora coffee being served in Windfall Island's cafe, as I have previously pointed out in the Islands of the Middle Period video. Not counting any Zora who may have already departed Hyrule at this point, there were likely at least two Zora species living on the Isles of the Great Sea. Still, it appears that the Zora of Great Fish Isle eventually left, and so the Rito took over the care of Jadun.
Many years then passed until a new lake arrived at Dragon Roost Island and was escorted by Quill to the Rito headquarters in what most likely used to be Goron City and was introduced to the Rito chieftain. It seems to strike the end of the traditional monarchy in the form of kings. Rito inherited the heraldic tradition of reign from their Zora ancestors.
Bro, back it down!
The chieftain promised learning about Link's quest and promised to aid him. First, needed to resolve a crisis surrounding their guardian spirit, the divinity
storm evolved from the water tower besides power, solar navigation technology, as well as presence of power. The obscurity of the became exceedingly access which is our ancestors instrumental as the new center. That and the north guarding the secret star of water as tasked to access heaven until the successor of star arrived at the point. It was prior to perhaps even after the imprisonment that the Zora World's named domain was already once experienced in the now pregnant Ghost Kingdom made a true masterpiece and absolute wonder to the world. Simply to destroy the empires of 10 years long and their domain occasionally flooded the central limits of the kingdom. As a result, the two monarchies of power were greatly risen. Zora's domain had built, in addition to those of the Zora's instrument was a monument system. This structure had the Caesar Zora as time became nations were eventually formed. The ancient Shiva to the entrance to the Zora also these towards the revolution of its name was for sages, it's welcome to enter. Unless Zora was now the sage from the distant past to enter the kingdom, in a way the families of the rooms and palaces of the planet contributed to the victory of the American princess and the ancient hero of the beginning, but outside of the world was not. 10,000 years later, forging across the bases of power persisted until King Arthur begat two children. His firstborn was the power to be as soon as decided. Over time, the slave living influence from the planets to the world. At the young age of 12, he already held the master sword, but he remained energy and once again, he was returned as Zora's domain. This time as the future champion and next defender of heaven against a Canadian Ganon or the Lord, was laid as now the enemy of his power. By the time Terrence and Zelda came to ask Michael to be the next planet to against the Great Divine Beast, Michael expressed the feelings that she had for Mike. She acknowledged him early the meaning of his master, and accepted the nomination in the presence of Satan, despite the concerns of the Great Kingdom of his words that night, as Princess Murphy's name was rebelled and began its counterattack and trapped within the divine force to write that Ganon defeated before he returned of the dead. The Zora princess, along with her body, were both slain on that tragic day.
Mika's death left all of Zora's domain devastated. All of her memory sent a light-scale Triton drift down the Zora River. Then Mika's voice came from the Triton saying, "Light-scale Triton and I are one. Abandon your grief and know joy once again. Do not cry, just remember." So every year on the day of the calamity, Zora holds the champion festival and offer her sacrifice. Then finally awakened from the shrine of resurrection, his journey to the calamity Ganon and save Hyrule, they came to Zora's domain. The rugged divine beast allowed her to curse the land with endless rage. He was there he also met Prince Sidon, Mika's brother and skilled warrior, quite possibly the strongest one next to his father, King Dorapon. It was with the help of these two individuals that Mika was able to mount the divine beast, kill water-like Ganon, and release against corruption. It was then he encountered Mika's spirit,
them pleasantly. In the end, both Sidon and Tulin fought against the demons, were being injured and forced to witness the one-on-one. Luckily, Link's victory with all three layers, Princess Zelda, the newly crowned Zora King, and Sage, along with Rito Sage, returned to the Sky Island. But this time, the Great called to witness the lost Zonai spirit, Mineru, bid her farewell, and prepare to serve Queen Zelda. And that is the end of the Zora and Rito 2, Kingdom and a village about to enter a new golden age, east and west of under reconstruction Hyrule Kingdom.
The expansive Zelda universe has seen many races, tribes, groups, and civilizations come and go over the years, some being present from the very beginning of time, and others vanishing at random points of history for unknown, and in some cases, known reasons. Every race or group can be found all across Hyrule in the current age, as it's a rather welcoming kingdom. It hasn't always been this way, however. Each respective group of people have their main settlements, such as the Zora typically being located within Zora's domain, the Gorons being housed within or on Death Mountain, and the Gerudo typically being far out within the Gerudo Desert. But the Gerudo have always been a bit of an outsider race. Not necessarily by choice either. You see, the Gerudo have a very complicated history, with parts of it which even we as the player don't know or can't explain. Their true origin is a mystery. Their connection to the King of Evil Ganondorf is an interesting time frame to study, and their way of life and evolution over the years is also a mystery, as they appear to be a dying race by the times of Twilight Princess and Four Swords Adventures, but seemingly appear to be a well-established group come Breath of the Wild. Point being, the history of the Gerudo is an incomplete one, and I thought it would be a really fun idea to make a sort of Gerudo history video, explaining their full history with a combination of facts but also theories to fill in the gaps, such as their origin, disappearances, what happened to them in each individual timeline, and so on. The inspiration behind all of this is both the new players brought into or back into the series with Breath of the Wild, but haven't been able to play or learn the lore of the older games, and B, my girlfriend suggested I cover the Gerudo for her birthday, which is actually today, so happy birthday, babe. If you enjoy, let me know, and maybe I'll do more of this on other Zelda races, tribes, groups, and such, as I understand a large majority of fans at the moment have only played Breath of the Wild, but have an interest in the older games. Be sure to remember that this will be partially theories and partially facts, as well as that this video took a tremendous amount of effort, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get to 100k subs very soon. Now, sit back. Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack or drink and send them in to get featured right here, and let's go over the complete history of the Gerudo in The Legend of Zelda. In the chronological Zelda timeline, the Gerudo make their first official appearance during the events of Ocarina of Time. They play the role of a band of thieves, notorious for their way of life, stealing for a living, hiding out in the harsh desert, but this isn't believed to be where they truly started off, so we'll come back to this. Rather, it is believed by many fans that the Gerudo actually originate from the first chronological game, Skyward Sword. This is the game in which we learn of their Hyrule King D following the slaying of the Miles. This is the earliest point of the Zelda timeline, and we see a few races: the Gorons, the Kikwi, the Parela, the Mogma, the Sheikah, and the Skyloftians, who later went on to become the Highlands upon the establishment of Hyrule from the events of the game. You can also consider the Lothwings, demons, and robots as races, but so why do fans believe they started back here? Well, that is thanks to one man, Bruce. If you played Skyward Sword, you'll know that Bruce is a bit of a weak character. He's a little bit of a meanie at first, but ultimately has a really fun personality, which shines later in the game. But is his connection to the Gerudo true? Well, as we know, in Gerudo lore, there is only one Gerudo male born every 100 years. Now, it is debatable whether this means every 100 years from the birth of the first male Gerudo, or 100 years after the death of the current male Gerudo. Personally, I believe the former, but we'll be delving into that some more later in the video. Bruce shares common Gerudo traits which no other character character appears to possess in this game. He has red hair and golden eyes, the two main features of the Gerudo. It has been commonly theorized by fans that Bruce may actually be the forefather of the Gerudo. A popular theory is that upon Bruce landing on the surface and being told by Granny that he has a role there on the surface, obviously this actually means aiding Link, but it has been suggested that the role didn't stop there. His role was to start a new race, the Gerudo, which if true